We're not against Muslims. We just don't think a mosque belongs in a residential neighborhood. Margaret Henderson's voice carried across the packed zoning board meeting in suburban Detroit. She stood at the microphone, her pearls catching the fluorescent lights, representing the concerned citizens of Dearborn Heights. Jamal Washington sat in the back row, his Amazon warehouse uniform still on from his shift. He'd driven straight from work to this meeting, the third one in 6 months. His hands were calloused from moving boxes all day. His back ached, but he was here. Because this wasn't just about a building. This was about whether his community had a right to exist. Property values will plummet. Traffic will increase. The character of our neighborhood will fundamentally change. She didn't say, "We don't want Muslims here." She didn't have to. The code was clear. Have you ever been told you don't belong somewhere before you've even arrived? Jamal was 38, born and raised in Detroit. His great-grandfather had worked in the Yotto factories. His grandfather had marched with Dr. Ting. His father had served in Vietnam. Jamal himself had never left Michigan except for a brief stint in the Army. He was as Detroit as Motown, as American as the Ford pickup truck he drove to work every day. He was also Muslim, had been for 15 years since a fellow soldier had given him a Quran during deployment. And now, the small Muslim community in Dearborn Heights, mostly Black Americans like himself, some immigrants, all working class, wanted to convert an abandoned grocery store into a community center with a prayer space. They'd raised $180,000, found the perfect location, followed every regulation. But for 6 months, the zoning board kept finding reasons to delay. Traffic studies needed, environmental impact assessment required, parking concerns unresolved. Meanwhile, 3 Christian churches and a yoga studio had opened in the same zone with minimal review. Jamal knew what this was. He'd seen it before. Board member Thomas Price cleared his throat. "Mrs. Henderson, thank you for your input. Are there other concerned citizens who'd like to speak?" 15 hands shot up, all from the same group, all with variations of the same message. "We're not racist, but. We're not Islamophobic, but. We respect religious freedom, but." The "but" erased everything that came before it. But here's what the concerned citizens didn't know yet. Jamal had been documenting everything. Every meeting, every delay, every church that got approved while the Muslim community got scrutinized. Every comment that wasn't quite racist enough to be illegal, but was racist enough to reveal intent. 6 months of documentation. Timestamps, recordings, meeting minutes, emails. He learned this in the Army. When facing superior forces, intelligence wins. "Mr. Washington," Board Chair Patricia Collins said, spotting him in the back, "you've been attending these meetings. Would you like to comment?" Jamal stood slowly. His 6'2" frame drew attention even without the Amazon uniform. He walked to the microphone with measured steps. "My name is Jamal Washington, born in Detroit, 3rd-generation Detroiter, Army veteran. I work at Amazon, warehouse, not corporate." He let that sink in. Working class, local, veteran. "I'm also Muslim. Been Muslim for 15 years, and I'm part of the community trying to open this center." Margaret Henderson shifted uncomfortably. "I've been to every one of these meetings. I've watched churches get approved in 30 days. I've watched a yoga studio get approved in 45 days. We've been in review for 180 days and counting." He pulled out a folder. "I have documentation. Every application in this zone for the past 2 years. Christian facilities, average approval time 42 days. Our Muslim Community Center, 180 days and counting. Board members exchanged glances. Mrs. Henderson says property values will plummet. But when St. Michael's Church opened 2 blocks over, property values increased 7%. Why would our center be different? Margaret stammered. That's not the same. Why not? Jamal's voice stayed calm. Be specific. The room fell silent.
I'll tell you why it's not the same, Jamal continued. Because when you see Muslims, you don't see neighbors. You see threats. You see others. You see people who don't belong. He looked directly at Margaret. But we are your neighbors. We work the same jobs. Our kids go to the same schools. We pay the same taxes. The only difference is how we pray. You won't believe what happened in the next 5 minutes. Board member Thomas Price shuffled papers uncomfortably. Mr. Washington, we're not discriminating. We're following proper procedures. Then why did the board waive the traffic study requirement for Crosspoint Church last year? Jamal pulled out another document. Meeting minutes, June 14th, 2023. Motion passed unanimously to waive traffic study. Crosspoint opened 3 months later. Price's face reddened. Why did the board approve Serenity Yoga Studio without an environmental assessment? Another document. That building was also a former grocery store. Same zoning, same concerns. Approved in 45 days. Jamal placed the documents on the table in front of the board. I'm not a lawyer. I work in a warehouse. But I can read. I can compare timelines. I can see patterns. And this pattern is discrimination. Patricia Collins, the board chair, looked at the documents. Her expression shifted from defensive to concerned. Mr. Washington, these are legitimate points. They're more than points, Jamal said quietly. They're evidence. And if this board votes to deny our application tonight, all of this documentation goes to the ACLU tomorrow morning. The threat hung in the air. Are you threatening this board? I'm informing them of my rights. First Amendment protects religious freedom. Equal Protection Clause prohibits discrimination. The ACLU takes cases like this pro bono. I've already spoken with them. He pulled out a business card. Attorney Sarah Mitchell, Civil Rights Division. She's reviewing this case right now. If we're denied tonight based on the same criteria that was waived for Christian organizations, the ACLU will file federal suit within 48 hours. The board members looked at each other, clearly unprepared for this level of preparation. Motion to table the decision for further review, Collins said quickly. Second, Price added, even faster. The vote was unanimous. Tabled. Again. Jamal returned to his seat. No victory, but no defeat either. Just more waiting. 2 weeks after the meeting, Jamal's car was vandalized. Go back, spray painted across the hood. Go back where? He was born in Detroit. 3 weeks later, someone left a burning Quran on the steps of Jamal's apartment building. 4 weeks later, police knocked on his door at 2 a.m. for a wellness check they claimed was anonymous. The third such check in 2 months. Jamal documented everything. Photos, police report numbers, witness statements. His son Marcus, age 9, asked, "Daddy, why do they hate us?" Jamal didn't have a good answer. They don't hate us, son. They hate what they think we are. There's a difference. What do they think we are? Different, scary, foreign. Jamal knelt to his son's eye level. But we're going to show them we're just people, same as them. How? By not giving up, by standing on what's right, by documenting everything they do wrong. Marcus didn't fully understand, but he understood his father wasn't backing down. Attorney Sarah Mitchell reviewed Jamal's documentation and was stunned. This is the most thorough discrimination case documentation I've seen from a civilian. You've essentially done our paralegal work for us. I was a logistics specialist in the Army. I know how to track things. Sarah spread out his documents. You have timeline comparisons, meeting minutes, approval rates by religious affiliation, even traffic patterns showing the parking concerns are fabricated. She looked up. Jamal, this isn't just a zoning case anymore. This is a federal civil rights violation. The pattern is undeniable.
What does that mean? It means we're not just suing the zoning board, we're suing the city for systematic discrimination. This could set precedent across Michigan. Jamal felt the weight of that. I just want to open a community center. I know, but sometimes one person's fight becomes everyone's fight. Are you ready for that? Jamal thought about his son asking why people hated them, about the burned Quran, about working 10-hour shifts then driving to zoning meetings where neighbors treated him like a terrorist. I'm ready. Washington v. City of Dearborn Heights was filed in U.S. District Court 3 months later. The complaint was devastating. 47 religious facilities approved in 5 years. Christian facilities, average 41 days approval. Muslim facility, 240 days and counting. Still no approval. Identical zoning requirements waived for Christian organizations, but enforced for Muslim applicants. Pattern of harassment against Muslim community members. The city's failure to investigate hate crimes. The case made local news, then national news. Detroit suburb faces federal discrimination lawsuit over Muslim community center. The city's defense was weak. We're following standard procedures. The ACLU's response, then explain why those standard procedures only apply to Muslims. The city tried to settle quietly, $50,000 and approval for the center. Jamal refused. This isn't about money, he told Sarah. This is about making sure they can't do this to the next community. I want a consent decree. I want court-ordered oversight. I want systemic change. Sarah smiled. You're not thinking like a warehouse worker anymore. You're thinking like a civil rights activist. I'm thinking like a father who doesn't want his son growing up in a city that treats Muslims like second-class citizens. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Jamal took the stand for 2 days. City Attorney David Brenner tried to paint him as an agitator. Mr. Washington, isn't it true you threatened the zoning board? I informed them of my legal rights, Jamal corrected. You said you'd file federal suit. Yes, that's not a threat, that's a promise to exercise my constitutional rights. Brenner pulled out documents. You filed 17 complaints with the city in 6 months. Doesn't that seem excessive? 17? Jamal raised an eyebrow. I've documented 37 incidents of discrimination or harassment. I only filed official complaints on the ones with witnesses or evidence. If anything, I underreported. Brenner tried another angle. Mr. Washington, you served in the Army. You're clearly intelligent and capable. Why haven't you moved to a community more welcoming to your faith? The question revealed everything. Because this is my home, Jamal said simply. My grandfather bought a house in this city in 1952. My father grew up here. I grew up here. My son is growing up here. I'm not leaving because some neighbors are uncomfortable with my religion. He leaned forward. This is America. I served this country. I have every right to live here, worship here, and build community here. The question isn't why don't I leave? The question is why are you asking me to leave? The courtroom was silent. Sarah Mitchell stood for redirect. Mr. Washington, in your 6 months of documentation, did you find any legitimate reason why the Muslim Community Center should be treated differently than Christian churches? No, ma'am. Did you find any safety concerns unique to the Muslim Center? No, ma'am. Did you find any zoning regulation that justified the differential treatment?
No, ma'am. The only difference was religion. Thank you. No further questions.
Judge Patricia Hernandez took 2 weeks to deliberate. Her ruling was scathing. The evidence presented demonstrates a clear pattern of discrimination against the Muslim community in Dearborn Heights. The city's defense that it was following standard procedures is belied by the fact that these procedures were selectively enforced based on religious affiliation. The court finds that the city of Dearborn Heights violated the First Amendment's Free Exercise Clause, the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, and the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, RLUIPA. The city is hereby ordered to 1. Immediately approve the Muslim Community Center application. 2. Pay $2.5 million in damages to the affected community. 3. Submit to 5 years of federal oversight. 4. Implement mandatory civil rights training for all city employees. 5. Establish a religious freedom liaison position. 6. Publicly apologize for discriminatory practices. The damages were split: $500,000 to the Muslim community for the center, $2 million to establish a civil rights fund for future victims of discrimination. Jamal didn't want personal compensation. This was never about me, he told reporters. It was about the next family, the next community, the next person who gets told they don't belong. 18 months after the first zoning board meeting, the Dearborn Heights Muslim Community Center opened. It wasn't just a prayer space, it was a full community center. After-school programs for kids, job training for adults, food bank serving everyone, not just Muslims, community meeting space available to all neighborhood groups, youth basketball league. The concerned citizens had predicted disaster, property values dropping, crime increasing, the character of the neighborhood changing. What actually happened? Property values increased 3% in the first year. Crime decreased. The center's youth programs gave kids positive activities. The food bank served 400 families monthly: Christian, Muslim, Jewish, atheist. 3 churches started partnering with the center for interfaith events. Margaret Henderson, who'd led the opposition, never publicly apologized, but her daughter started volunteering at the center's food bank. "I'm here because my mom changed her mind," Ashley told Jamal. "I'm here because I saw what you went through, and I was ashamed. You showed more grace than we deserved." The Washington versus Dearborn Heights decision became legal precedent. It was cited in 17 subsequent cases across 12 states. Cities learned discrimination against religious minorities was expensive. Federal judges weren't playing games. Documentation mattered. Jamal's approach, meticulous record-keeping, calm persistence, and legal preparation became a model, taught by civil rights organizations. The Washington method, they called it. Document everything, compare treatment systematically, exhaust administrative remedies, prepare legal action early, refuse quick settlements that don't create systemic change. The ACLU created a training program based on Jamal's case. Over 2,000 communities used it when facing similar discrimination. But for Jamal, the victory was simpler. His son Marcus, now 14, played basketball at the community center every Tuesday. His team was black kids, white kids, Arab kids, Latino kids. They didn't care about religion, they cared about layups and defense. "Dad," Marcus asked one evening, "do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd given up?" Jamal thought about it. "Yeah, we wouldn't have the center. But more than that, every other community facing the same thing would have one less example of fighting back and winning." So it wasn't really about us? It started about us, but it became about everyone who comes after us. That's how change works, son. Someone has to go first. Someone has to take the hits. Someone has to do the work so it's easier for the next person. Marcus nodded. "When I grow up, I want to be like you." "Better than me," Jamal corrected. "That's the whole point." A decade after the lawsuit, Dearborn Heights had transformed. The Muslim Community Center had expanded twice. It now served 3,000 families monthly. The interfaith partnerships included 4 churches, 2 synagogues, and a Sikh Gurdwara. The city, under federal oversight, had become a model for religious inclusion. Other municipalities sent delegations to study their approach. The Concerned Citizens Group had dissolved. Some former members joined the center's advisory board, others moved away. Most just quietly accepted what they'd fought against. Property values in the neighborhood around the center had increased 18%, the highest growth rate in the city. Jamal was promoted to shift supervisor at Amazon, but his real work was as a volunteer civil rights advocate. He'd helped 12 other communities facing similar discrimination, teaching them documentation techniques, connecting them with lawyers, showing them the path. His son Marcus was in law school, planning to specialize in civil rights. "You inspired me," Marcus told his father. "Watching you refuse to back down, watching you turn anger into action. That's what I want to do." Jamal felt the weight of legacy. His great-grandfather in the auto factories, his grandfather marching for civil rights, his father serving in Vietnam, and now him, fighting for religious freedom in suburban Detroit. Each generation fighting their battles, each generation making it better for the next. "Just remember," Jamal told his son, "the fight isn't about being angry, it's about being strategic. Document, persist, build coalitions, change systems, not just outcomes." Marcus wrote it down. These lessons would guide his career. Jamal stood in the community center on its 15th anniversary. Hundreds of people packed the hall, Muslims, Christians, Jews, atheists, all celebrating together. Mayor Rodriguez, who'd replaced the mayor during the lawsuit, gave a speech. 15 years ago, this community was divided. Some wanted this center, others opposed it. But one man, Jamal Washington, showed us that justice doesn't require anger. It requires documentation, it requires persistence, it requires believing in the system enough to hold it accountable. The crowd applauded. Mr. Washington didn't just win a lawsuit, he transformed a city. He showed us that our diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. That inclusion isn't a threat, it's our greatest strength. Jamal accepted a community service award. His acceptance speech was brief. "I'm not a hero. I'm a warehouse worker who got tired of being told he didn't belong in his own hometown. I'm a father who wanted his son to grow up in a city that respects all faiths." He paused. "But I learned something important. Individual courage matters, but systems require institutions, courts, laws, oversight, documentation. If you're facing discrimination, don't just get mad, get meticulous. Record everything. Compare treatment. Build your case. Then force the system to live up to its promises. Because the system might fail you once, twice, 100 times, but if you document those failures, eventually the system has to change or admit it's broken." The crowd gave him a standing ovation. Later, a young Somali woman approached. "Mr. Washington, our mosque in Ann Arbor is facing similar opposition. Can you help us?" Jamal smiled. "I can do better than help. I can teach you how to help yourselves." Because that's what real change looked like. Not one person fighting one battle, but one person teaching 100 people who teach 1,000 people. The Washington method spreading. Community by community. Fight by fight. Until the day when Muslim communities didn't have to fight at all. When opening a community center was as easy as opening a church. When religious freedom was a guarantee, not a battle. That day hadn't come yet, but Jamal had brought it closer. One documented meeting at a time. 15 years after Washington versus Dearborn Heights, 47 cities adopted religious freedom protection ordinances. 12 states passed laws prohibiting differential treatment of religious facilities. The U.S. Department of Justice used the case as a training example. Over 200 Muslim communities successfully opened centers using Jamal's documentation method. But the real impact was cultural. Zoning boards across America learned that concerned citizens objecting to mosques wouldn't be tolerated, that traffic concerns and property values excuses would be scrutinized, that discrimination had consequences. Jamal's Amazon co-workers, many immigrants themselves, found hope in his story. If Jamal could fight City Hall, they said, we can fight workplace discrimination.
His method was adapted for employment cases, housing discrimination, education access, anywhere systematic inequality existed. The lesson was simple but powerful. Documentation defeats discrimination. Persistence defeats prejudice. Strategic action defeats systematic injustice. You didn't need to be rich, didn't need to be a lawyer, didn't need institutional power. You needed patience, evidence, refusal to quit. Jamal Washington, warehouse worker, showed that ordinary people could force extraordinary change, not through violence, not through anger, through meticulous records and unwavering belief that the system, when forced to confront its own contradictions, would choose justice. He was right. It took 6 years, a federal lawsuit, and countless hours of documentation. But he was right. Have you faced discrimination in your community? Zoning issues, housing, religious freedom. Jamal's lesson: document everything. Compare treatment systematically. Build your case. Force accountability. You don't need power. You need patience and evidence. Share this if you believe communities belong to everyone, not just those who got there first. Subscribe for more stories of ordinary people creating extraordinary change through strategic action and legal persistence.